protests. More are planned across the UK this weekend. 5 police officers were injured, 4 hospitalised and 10 people arrested after another night of serious violence on the streets. Protesters attacked a police officer, set a car on fire and surrounded a mosque in Sunderland. What are they thinking of? That's as the Prime Minister warned protesters they face the full force of the law as he tries to crack down on the violence. This all comes, of course, after those 3 little girls were savagely murdered during that mass stabbing in Southport earlier this week. Well, let's go now straight to our GB News reporter, Adam Cherry, who is outside the Home Office. Adam, good afternoon again to you. There's no sign of the Home Secretary, but I guess she's monitoring events closely because the fear is, if you look at the front page of The Guardian today, they briefed the papers that the far right, they say, are planning even more disruption.
That's right, Andrew. Yes, we've actually moved. We were outside the Home Office all day long, and now, if the viewers on television will see behind me, we're on Parliament Square, and that's because there's another protest going on today, unrelated to the far right that you've just described. This is a Palestine Solidarity Campaign protest, which has, we understand, within the last hour or so, collided with some counter-protesters. And here, they're just off camera to my right, all at Whitehall, thousands of people. And so, as I say, in the last hour, the Metropolitan Police have said that there have been 2 arrests here. One because a protester gave a Nazi salute to a counter-protester, and another because someone had a sign from a proscribed organisation. Now, we don't know what that organisation was, although people will speculate. And again, as I see, for those watching on television behind me, you can see they're sort of spilling out. The majority of them were focused. The majority of them are focused along Whitehall itself. There's a platform, speakers. They have to disperse by 4:30. That's a direct order from the Metropolitan Police. Of course, whether that happens in time remains to be seen. But to your point, Andrew, the Home Secretary, we are expecting to hear from her hopefully by this afternoon or perhaps tomorrow morning. She'll have more to say on this. Yes, she's briefed the newspapers, but don't expect this to be the last from the government over the weekend. In fact, we understand also that the government is having a cabinet meeting discussing all of this within the next few hours, perhaps within the next hour. So a lot going on and a very busy moment. As I said to you earlier, Andrew, the honeymoon period is very much over for this government 1 month in.
Just a personal view here. I'm just sick to death of these guards of protesters every Saturday. Why do they need to do it? They've made their point. They cause huge disruption, and a lot of it is there are anti-Semitic elements within it. It diverts huge police resources to have to patrol it. I just wish they'd just give up and go away. It's the summer. Let's have a break from it.
Well, I mean, I have to say, today, what I've seen has been peaceful. However, I have seen several signs with the words "from the river to the sea" on them, which, of course, we understand as an anti-Semitic phrase. So, yeah, that is still here today, Andrew.
All right, that's Adam Cherry, who is at Parliament Square. We're going to go now to Liverpool and speak to GB News reporter Anna Riley, where there were demonstrations. It sounds pretty noisy, Anna. What's going on?
Well, Andrew, these demonstrations continue, but the police have put a dispersal order in place to move on protesters, both from the original protest that was scheduled here and the counter-protest, which you can now see. So these are members of the counter-protest group. You can see police here with helmets, riot shields and dogs. And on the opposite side is the other original protest that first began this afternoon. We know that the counter-protesters, as you can see, they've got signs up saying "Stop fascism," "Refugees are welcome here," "Stop racism." They have been heard chanting "Where's your Tommy gone?" at the group ahead. This lady here has got a sign up saying "Not far right, just fed up." So I saw another similar sign as well at the original protest that began, a man saying "I'm not far right, I'm just a father." But if we just move on now, we can see this group here with police vans behind them. We know that officers with riot shields and helmets moved the crowd back earlier when we spoke to you, with cans, bottles and coins being thrown. And then we know where we are now, the Strand in Liverpool, that a police officer on a motorbike was kicked and knocked off his vehicle by a demonstrator, and that a traffic cone has been thrown. and that one man was pinned to the floor by officers as others tried to kick riot shields, with demonstrators on this side of the road that you can see now again chanting "Save our kids." We've also seen reports as well that a chair has been thrown by demonstrators that has hit an officer on the head here in Liverpool, and that the windscreen of a police van was smashed as bricks and plastic barriers were thrown, and bricks were pelted at vans, police vans and officers by youths with their faces covered, and then that's when the riot officers got involved to move them back. We know that the police as well have extra powers in place under a Section 60 order at the moment. That's enhanced powers to stop and search demonstrators and protesters. But as you can see now, the police are further moving back this counter-protest group. They are doing their best to move back the original protesters and also this counter-protest group now that we see here. Again, there are signs, quite conflict here that we can see. I don't know if you can come in a little bit, John, but there's a lady here with a refugees welcome here sign, and this man from the original protest in white. There's quite a tense standoff between them now that is going on, as you can see that now.
OK, Anna, thank you for that. That's Anna Riley in Liverpool, and she'll keep us up to date on that. Well, to discuss this further, in the studio, my panel is the broadcaster and economist Lizzie Cundy and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Lyons. Matthew, to you first. It suits the government to say this is all being organised by the far right. But a lot of the people who will be at these demonstrations are not political activists. They are people who are saying, I'm not far right, I'm fed up, or I'm worried about kids.
Well, clearly there are some people there who are just angry, still in shock about what happened. But the truth of the matter is they are being coordinated by the far right, because we've seen that. And that's what we saw in Sunderland yesterday, where the Citizens Advice Bureau was set on fire. Sunderland is an overwhelmingly white working-class community, so it's not like the Citizens Advice Bureau spends its time handing out advice to people other than the white working class of Sunderland. So it's just completely self-destructive violence, which frankly we saw in the 80s, and more recently, when the Brixton riots and things in the 80s and the Toxteth riots, which tended to be around disillusioned Afro-Caribbean communities, and people ended up, all the histories, you end up damaging your own community by setting things on fire. So, I mean, and there clearly has been coordination by the far right as well. And I think what we saw yesterday was such dignified. We saw buildings across the northwest and Downing Street lit up in pink in memory of the girls in Southport. It's time to remember them. Are there any lessons to be learned as the court case goes on? Then let's learn them. But this isn't the way.
Lizzie, I don't. Of course, I deplore the violence, but I do think this is. I said it earlier in this programme. Years and years for some people of disenchantment, unease. People feel immigration has been too swift, too rapid in this country. It's not been managed properly. Multiculturalism is not working as it should, and people feel isolated and strangers in their own community.
You're exactly right, and I think that lady's sign said it all. You know, not far right, fed up.
Yeah.
And many people feel that. Many people I speak to, and I'm very close. My mother is from Southport, and I have family members there, and it's really affected the community beyond. And look, no, everyone is against the thuggery on what we've witnessed, but you can understand that people are angry, and I don't think Keir Starmer addressed it at all well, because why didn't he? To explain why people are angry, why this country has become like it is since he's been in power, Matthew. I mean, 3,300 have already come in. People don't know on the boats. And this is, people are scared, frightened, and they're thinking, if this can happen, and I know Southport very well, in this sleepy, beautiful seaside town, the stabbings of 3 beautiful little girls, this could happen to me, to my family, to my grandchildren. People are scared and frustrated, and Keir Starmer isn't addressing that.
I mean, immigration is going to become a huge issue, isn't it? Because, look, they said they got a solution for the boats. Now, the boats is minor, frankly. I mean, how the Tory government allowed migration to reach... It was over 1 million people arrived last year, that some people left, so the final figure was 675,000. That's a massive city pouring into this country.
Absolutely.
Every year, there's no homes for people, there's no schools, there's no houses. You know, we have Angela Rayner making a major statement in the last last week about how she's going to create all these extra houses, without conceding that the massive increase in immigration, which started under a Labour government under Tony Blair, is a big factor. It's the elephant in the room which they're not addressing.
Well, I think, legal migration was higher in the last few years of the Conservative government than it was under any year of the Labour government. And, of course, a lot of the migration under Labour was EU migration, where there was a kind of churn and a lot of people went home. What we're seeing is a lot of people joining their families, and the big issue about family visas was actually the Labour government made a decision this week that it wasn't going to impose the limit. That may come back to haunt them. It's going to review...
Just remind people what they did there.
It's going to review the limit on the... to increase the minimum earnings that you need to be able to bring somebody...
Which was going to be... It was going to go up to about 38,000.
Yeah, 37.5, 38,000.
And they've scrapped that.
They've paused it. They haven't scrapped it. So that would be interesting to see what a decision is made about that in the coming weeks, because obviously there is public anger about immigration. And, you know, Labour does realise it has to get illegal and legal migration down. It does...
But Matthew hardly mentioned it, did he, in the elections? He didn't mention immigration in his manifesto. There's 10 million that have come in since Labour were last in power. If you know, they're saying about building on the green belt. If we actually built a house every 2 minutes, it wouldn't be enough.
Which is why we need to...
It wouldn't be enough.
Yeah.
That's why people are angry, why they're scared, why I am actually so thinking of not being in... I love this country, but not wanting to live here anymore. I am actually frightened. I can't believe what I'm witnessing.
Totally
and he didn't talk about immigration, did he? All the boats.
I mean, we don't know that this case has anything to do with migration. We can't say that.
Let's take the case out of it. But he's got to be careful here about the political vacuum if he doesn't fill it, because you know who will fill it? Nigel Farage's Reform Party.
Yeah, I mean, look, they have to look. The immediate events that were happening this weekend, where clearly people are being bussed in from outside. There's real anger. Frankly, there's real anger in Sunderland. We saw the community coming together this morning. Many of them in Sunderland shirts, as patriotic, and England shirts, as patriotic as anybody who was throwing things last night, coming to clear up this morning. We saw, a pensioner with a saying "Nans against Nazis," which I thought was rather extremely heartfelt. So at the moment you need to address the far right issue. Clearly, but we cannot allow disquiet about migration and disquiet about knife crime to get moulded together and to become one set of political discontent which goes much wider than the far right. So let's deal with people who are exploiting communities' anger and grief at the moment. Let's deal with that now, as we would with any group.
Well, he has to address the anger. Britain's on a knife edge. Britain is on a knife edge, and he has to address it.
If the Cabinet is having a meeting this weekend, and if the Home Secretary is going to speak, I hope that she does broaden it beyond what happened in Southport, because it's not just about Southport.
No, it's not.
In fact, it's a lot about not Southport, actually.
Yes,
this has been brewing for years, in my view.
It's been brewing and bubbling, and we're at a pressure point now. And you know what? He wants to get rid of these riots. You know what he has to do? Stop the boats. He wants to improve dire housing. You know what he has to do? Stop the boats. He wants do you want to give the pensioners some money?
Because
stop the boats.
But the other thing is, of course,
they had a policy called Rwanda. We know it was driving people out of Southern Ireland. It was driving people out of Northern Ireland into Southern Ireland because they didn't want the migrants in Northern Ireland to go to Rwanda. Well,
one of the key things we've seen, one of the flashpoints we've seen in Aldershot over the last 48 hours is around, and in other places, it's around a hotel which is full of people waiting for a decision. The first thing we need to do is get a system that works so people who shouldn't be here are sent home, and we don't have local communities with their hotels full of
Two tiers. Keir should address it.